Archaeologists have been exploring caves and castles built by humans centuries before our time and have somehow always found a logical explanation for those structures. But the ancient city of Sigiriya is another wonder of the world that most people still can't believe was built by man. Located 200 meters at the top of a hill, Sigiriya is a fortified architectural marvel that might have been built long before humans could construct houses. Join us as we take a look at the ancient city built by the gods, the lost city of Sigiriya. It's not surprising to find archaeological structures that give us a glimpse into the past, but the ancient city of Sigiriya might be one place where we look back to a time of archaeological advancement thousands of years into the past. The structures in and around the ancient city are so well planned and thought out that experts say they should not have existed at the time the city was built, some 1500 years ago. Around the city are pools of water and fountains that run up and down the 180-meter-high rock in underground pathways and reservoirs that were simply too advanced for the time. Located in the central province of Sri Lanka, the ancient city of Sigiriya is a rock fortress built at the top of a massive boulder, approximately 180 meters high. Surrounded by lush gardens and forests, Sigiriya is a strategic yet opulent city built for both luxury and fortitude. Now a historical site with over 1 million visitors each year, the history of this ancient city is something straight out of an Indiana Jones movie. According to ancient text from the Kalavamsa, the revered Sri Lankan chronicles, the city of Sigiriya was built by King Kashyapa during his 18-year reign between 477 to 495 AD. The illustrious king selected the site for his new capital after he took the throne and is credited with building the slew of advanced structures in the city, some of which are still standing to this day. But before King Kashyapa settled in the city and built his magnificent palace, he had to take the throne from his father, something he did in the most gruesome way possible. Before Kashyapa was born, his father, King Datusena, ruled over the provinces of Sri Lanka after uniting the war-torn fractions of the island nation. Kashyapa was the firstborn and eldest son of King Datusena, but was not the heir to the throne. The king had another son, Moggallana, who was born to the queen and hence was the rightful heir to the throne of Sri Lanka. And since Kashyapa was born to a mere concubine, he had no claims to the throne and was to watch his half-little brother rule over him, but he wasn't having any of that. Seeking the throne for himself, Kashyapa sought to usurp his brother and planned a coup to overthrow his father, who was still king at the time. Joining forces with the commander of the king's army, Megara, they successfully carried out a palace coup and dethroned King Datusena in the year 483. Now the king of the Mauryan dynasty of Sri Lanka, Kashyapa believed his father had large stashes of wealth hidden away, which only turned out to be a large reservoir of water he had constructed to ensure his people and their farmlands had water for generations to come. Disappointed at his father's lack of wealth, Kashyapa had his father murdered in the most gruesome way possible by having him buried alive behind a wall. While his half-brother ruled as king, Moggallana, the rightful heir to the throne, feared for his life and fled to India to escape assassination by his brother's hand, but he vowed to return and claim his throne. Anticipating the inevitable attack and retaliation by his half-brother, Kashyapa moved his palace in the capital from the traditional city of Anuradhapura to the more secure summit of Sigiriya, where he began to build what would be the most advanced architectural palace in Sri Lanka at the time. Over the course of his 18-year reign, King Kashyapa developed Sigiriya into a beautifully fortified oasis, filled with pleasure palace structures and ridiculously advanced water flow systems. The sheer planning and structural advancement of Sigiriya has led many folklores to preclude that it wasn't simply human wisdom that built the palace city, but through an act of the gods themselves. The architectural symmetry seemingly combined the natural formation of the rock and the man-made structures in unique concepts of design that still baffle architects today. The palace was named Sigiriya, which meant Lion Rock, which was fitting, as one of the most striking features of the city is the lion entrance opening away to the top of the rock. One of the most striking features of Sigiriya is a large display of lifelike drawings and paintings which covers a significant portion of the western face of the wall. Frescoes, as they are called, these paintings depict drawings of partially dressed women portrayed in different styles and activities. Although the current paintings depict just 22 women, the entire area of the frescoes covers an area of over 140 meters long and 40 meters high. It is believed to have accommodated over 500 paintings of these women. Although most of the graffiti paintings of these women have been lost over the course of centuries, more of these paintings can be found elsewhere on the rock. Other such paintings have been found on the ceilings of an underground location near the base of the rock called Cobra Hood Cave. The paintings and styles of these frescoes are incredibly unique. Although they've been classified in the Anuradhapura era, the styles and applications of the paintings differ from other such paintings from that era. The lines are depicted in such a way that they enhance the volume of the painting itself, most likely applied with sweeping brushstrokes, which give the effect of deeper color palettes towards the edge. This technique of painting was not known in Sri Lanka during that period, further adding a layer of mystery to the features surrounding Sigiriya. The true identities of the women in these paintings are unknown, but over time most people believe they were wives and concubines of King Kashyapa. Their adornments and the sheer raw nature of the drawings further reinforce that they could have been women who occupied the pleasure palaces of King Kashyapa. Also, the location of the paintings are so strategic that they are hidden away from the effects of rain and direct sunlight, helping to keep them intact for over 15 centuries. The sheer opulence of Sigiriya makes it a sight to behold, and another fascinating aspect of the ancient city is the mirror wall. The mirror wall is a long stretch of stone that hedged the spiral stairs leading to the frescoes. The wall was made with brick masonry but was covered with polished white plaster so frequently that the king could see his reflection on the walls. Over the centuries, the mirror wall has been covered by poems and verses scribbled by visitors and nomads who have either passed through or lived in the ancient city. Some of these poems date as far back as the 8th century, with most of them traced to the 9th and 10th century AD. People from all backgrounds, from high-ranking government officials to poets, artisans, and even housewives, have all etched some part of their history on the mirror wall. Even the Buddhist monks who lived there long after the reign of King Kashyapa wrote poems of love, loss, irony, and philosophy on the mirror wall of Sigiriya. Most of these poems are currently of high literary value due to their use of rhyme and meter, which some noted to have play on words, puns, and even sarcasm. Over 1,500 different poems and verses are written along the length of the mirror wall, many of which are addressed to the beautiful ladies on the frescoes. The poems showcased the high praise the men had for the beauty and elegance of these women. Some of the poems appear to be written by other women, showcasing envy and anger at the beauty and fresco women. One poem in particular states, "A deer-eyed maiden of the mountainside arouses anger in my mind. In her hand she holds a string of pearls, and in her eyes she assumes rivalry with me." Today, writing on the wall by tourists has been banned to protect the original writings and to maintain their authenticity for as long as archaeologically possible. While the frescoes and the mirror wall depict pieces of the history and mystery of Sigiriya, the most notable feature of the ancient city is its water gardens. Perhaps the most profound features of the ancient city, these parks and water gardens lie at the very top of the rock, covering the entire summit. The summit contained the royal palace as well as other park areas built for the royals. Built over 1,500 years ago, the palace was constructed using wood instead of stone, probably due to the high elevation and the hassle it would be to carry tons of stone up a 200-meter elevation. Instead, the palace was built with wood, and over time, they crumbled to the forces of nature. However, the amenities in the park, which was specifically built for the royals, still remain standing. This included water structures such as fountains and pools, which were built with sophisticated subsurface hydraulic systems designed to carry water throughout the entire summit all the way down to the pools below. Some of these structures and hydraulic systems are still functional even today. The gardens of Sigiriya are currently some of the oldest landscape gardens found anywhere in the world. In the entire city, there were 3 distinct gardens, all of which were linked by some form of hydraulic underground water system. These included the cave and boulder gardens located on the side and below the rock, the terrace gardens at the summit of the rock, and the water gardens on the forest floor surrounding Sigiriya. The water gardens occupy the central portion of Sigiriya, consisting of 3 principal gardens. Each garden is designed with a plot surrounded by water and connected to 3 main city precincts using sophisticated surface and subsurface waterways. They're one of the oldest surviving models of such gardens ever built in the world, and surprisingly, most of the fountains found in these gardens still function unautomated and are completely powered by pre-existing underground systems. These fountains function with a supply of underground water which works exceptionally well during the rainy season. Some of these gardens are built around small makeshift islands surrounded by water, with summer palaces built on each island, specifically made for the royals and those in the king's court. All the water gardens are fed by a constant supply of water from an artificial lake constructed at the base of the Sigiriya rock. And then there are the boulder gardens. These gardens are made of unique boulder arrangements which extend from the northern slopes of the rock all the way down to the southern slope at the base of the city rock. While these boulder gardens are aesthetic to look at, they served a strategic purpose. They were used to push off rocks from the side of the hill during an enemy attack. A strategy that was used during the war that ended King Kasyapa's reign, but we'll get to that later on. Lastly, there are the terrace gardens, formed using the natural rock formation at the base of the hill. These gardens spread out at the base and open up a pathway leading up to the staircase on the side of the rock. From the staircase, there's a path leading up to the mid-level terrace where the Great Lion's Staircase is located. The Lion's Staircase is one of the most significant features of Sigiriya due to its unique construction and size. It features two large lion paws with an ascending stairway that leads to the summit of Sigiriya. Back when the city was built, the Lion's Staircase had an equally large head, with the staircase passing right through its open jaws. Over time, the head succumbed to weathering and collapsed, which is sad because it would have made for a truly marvelous sight to behold. The city of Sigiriya extends far beyond the mighty rock itself, and from an aerial view, we can see there was a larger portion of land at the base, with 5 gates spreading out at each entrance. The most noticeable western gate, which we can see here, is believed to have been reserved for the king and court alone. While King Kashyapa spent his 18-year reign building Sigiriya to its revered glory, war was brewing. Remember Moggallana, the legitimate heir to the throne of Sri Lanka who fled to India? Well, he returned with a massive army to reclaim his father's throne. In the year 495, after amassing a large army from India, Moggallana stormed the ancient city of Sigiriya, but was met with strategic resistance from his half-brother who had anticipated his return. The war was fought for days, and according to Sri Lankan folklore, during the final battle, Sigiriya forces were engaged with the invaders, and Kashyapa, who was mounted on his battle elephant, decided to make a strategic change in course mid-battle. But his army interpreted this change in course as a retreat by their king, resulting in the entire army retreating themselves and abandoning the king. In the end, Moggallana's forces overtook Sigiriya, almost capturing Kashyapa. But as a proud king who would rather die than be captured, Kashyapa took his own dagger and slit his throat. Moggallana ruled over Sri Lanka and returned the nation's capital back to Anuradhapura, converting the palace city of Sigiriya into Buddhist monasteries. These monasteries survived for well over 1,000 years until the 17th century, when the city was used as an outpost of the Kangdi kingdom. Sigiriya remained hidden from the modern world until sometime in 1831, when Major Jonathan Forbes of the 78 Highlander in the British Army stumbled on the bush-covered summit of the ancient city. But it wasn't until the early 1890s that archaeological expeditions were taken to Sigiriya. The very first archaeologist to conduct an extensive research on the ancient city was H.C.P. Bell, who wrote some of the very first extensive text on the current and previous states of the palace city. Over a century later, in 1982, the Sri Lankan government sanctioned archaeological expeditions on the entire city, opening it up to archaeologists and tourists looking to discover the rich history of one of the country's most revered sites. There have been massive restoration efforts put into the city, especially at the site of the frescoes, which were vandalized sometime in 1967. The restoration, led by cultural restoration and preservation specialist Luciano Moranzi, took over a year to complete and saw that some of the vandalized frescoes received a sort of facelift, if you will. There are current reports that the original color of the frescoes are fading, but it's to be expected after over 1,500 years in the open. Now a UNESCO-listed World Heritage Site, Sigiriya is a prime example of one of the best ancient sites of urban planning and speaks to the early ingenuity of humans in that era. While the construction of Sigiriya has been attributed to King Kashyapa, also known as the King of Patricide, for what he did to his father, experts believe the site has been occupied during much older times. There has been clear evidence of early human habitation of the rock summit as far back as the Mesolithic period, some 5,000 years ago. Evidence of early Buddhist monasteries and settlements have also been traced to as far back as the 3rd century BC, some 700 years before the rise of King Kashyapa. Today, the ancient city of Sigiriya sees over 1 million visitors each year, with tourists and archaeologists intrigued at the feat of architecture constructed over 1,500 years ago. Although the theory that the city was built by the gods has largely been debunked, certain Sri Lankan folklore still believe that it was the gods who gave Kashyapa the advanced ideas to build the city. What do you think? Did Kashyapa get advanced construction ideas from the gods, or was he just the twisted Da Vinci of his time? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.